Well, today we're going over the college football playoffs for the 2024 season, brand new 12-team format. I have with me a special guest from the Midwest, Respect the Midwest podcast, FlashJordan. Welcome to Sea Crew Sports Channel.
Yeah, I appreciate you for having me on. I'm really looking forward to this discussion. We were talking a little bit beforehand about some of the interesting things that can happen this year, and it's definitely going to be a wild year. So I think this is a good place to start for sure.
Yes, yes, yes. We have the college football selection committee, ranks the top 25 teams at the end of the season. And that's the ranking that matters. Something that I think people believe are going to be the situation is that the you know the Power Five became the Power Four with the Pac-12 going out down to two teams, and so who knows what's going to happen with them? But the four highest ranked conference champions are seeded 1 through 4. So that does not mean that the Power Four conferences, the Big Ten, the ACC, the SEC, and the Big 12, are all have an automatic bid. Isn't that interesting?
It is interesting, and I don't know that we'll see many scenarios where that doesn't end up being the case, but the possibility, of course, is there for a group of five team that goes on a run or, you know, the Pac-12 potentially. I mean, I don't know. That's a whole nother can of worms. But I don't really see a world where it doesn't end up being like that. But again, like you said, it is a possibility. So it's definitely something to think about.
It's one of those things where, let's say the ACC doesn't do well and their conference champion is ranked, say, maybe 5 or 6, and maybe same with the Big 12, that the conference champion was the team that was second place in the conference is in the championship, and they somehow beat a higher ranked team, and that team moves out of the top 4, and then maybe you have two Big 10 or two SEC, because the two SECs, let's say they're undefeated. You know what I mean? How do you not? So that's interesting. With that said, I would say that let's just talk about the Big Ten, but really let's first talk about the four candidates. If it was to be the Power Four, which it probably will be, who do you have in the ACC going?
So it's tough to pinpoint after you go through the first couple of teams. I think the three that have the highest, just on paper, have the highest odds and best chances just based on their roster are Florida State, Miami, and Clemson. You can order those in any way you want to, but I would say those are the three with the best and most realistic chances. If you're trying to play the schedule game and think, okay, this team has an easier schedule, they could maybe sneak in. You're maybe looking at Louisville. NC State looks like they might have a good squad this year, but they haven't recruited well enough slash played on the field well enough to convince me
Like in
that
none
they
of
should
those
be
teams, you're saying that none of them stand out to you.
outside of Florida State, Miami, and Clemson. I think those are the only three that you can really have a confident discussion about because there's a lot of different things you could look to. Clemson, obviously, they've been great before. They've been stuck in the last 3 years. Florida State, 13-0 last year before their quarterback got hurt,
That's a big
and
deal.
then Miami, they've recruited so well. Again, on paper, they should be in the discussion. But like I said, NC State and Louisville, teams that could get there because I think their schedule works out pretty well for them, but there's just not really anything else you can point to besides that.
Yeah, I with the Florida State snub. I mean, wasn't that crazy? I would say that Florida State or Miami. I'm gonna just go with the state of Florida because Miami's got Cam Ward. I think he's gonna lead them. He's gonna blow right through the ACC rosters. I mean, so let's just pick Miami. Maybe
Yeah.
maybe the criminals can make a comeback.
Oh, come
Um,
on. I do want to give a quick mention to Virginia Tech as well. They're sort of the off-season darling because they're probably, I can't remember what they were ranked in the coaches pool, but they bring everybody back. I think they lead the country in returning
oh right,
production
wow.
overall, either just offense, something like that. Regardless, they've sort of been the off-season darling, but even less than NC State and Louisville, we haven't seen it from them in a very long time.
Wow. All right, moving on to the Big 12. What do you think about the Big 12? Who's your pick from the Big 12 for the automatic bid?
You could go up to a random person on the side of the street and say, "Hey, pick one of these 9 teams," or because I think it's 9 teams that could potentially win the conference. As crazy as that sounds, that's just how balanced the league is. Does a balanced league mean that it's actually a national championship slash playoff contending league? Well, I don't know. We're gonna have to find that out. The ones that come to my head immediately, Oklahoma State is up there because they have the oldest offensive line in the country. Ollie Gordon, the running back. They're going to be a good team regardless. Mike Gundy knows how to get it done. The other ones that come to mind, Utah and Kansas State as well. I think those are the three at the top that I would mention. But like I said, I could see any of the top 9 teams. Iowa State, I would throw them in there too. I could see any of these teams winning the conference. I guess the debate will be, will any of them get an at-large bid? And that's where I have some hesitation. I don't know that not only will they get the respect they deserve, but they may not even have a good enough record because I think these teams are just going to beat each other up all year.
True, true. I think the standout is Utah. I don't really see, with the addition of Arizona. I see Utah. My pick is Utah. Would you agree that that's a decent pick?
Oh, absolutely. I think they are the odds-on favorite as well. Arizona is another good one that you did throw in there. Arizona would be, for me, Arizona would be the bona fide number one top 10 team potentially in the Big 12. And I mean top 10 nationally, not top 10 in the
Right,
conference.
right.
But their coach did leave them, took over the Washington job. So that's the only hesitation I have. And so that's kind of why I didn't mention them in the group before, but they do bring back a lot of talent. So, but yeah, I think Utah, them being the favorite, them having the best consistent proven track record, yeah, I think it's a pretty good pick.
Recently, yeah. So we're gonna pick Utah. The question is, will it be an automatic bid? But who knows? I mean, that's really yet to play out. And if it's not, what is the group of five? You know what I mean? Like, who else is getting in from the group of five? So the playoff ranking is going to be a whole lot different, I think, because of the automatic bids. Don't think that won't come into play in their discussions.
Yeah,
So
no, I totally agree.
right now, the two biggest conferences that matter, the SEC and the Big Ten. Let's start with the SEC. What you got for the SEC?
Look, I don't want to say anything too crazy, even hyperbolic, but the SEC, man, it's going to be one of the most fun years watching a conference, just in terms of the talent at the top of the conference. In my opinion, they have 4 teams that I could see any one of them be the number one seed in the college football playoff, and that's Georgia, it's Alabama, it's Texas, and it's Ole Miss. And that's not even mentioning Missouri and Oklahoma. I mean, that's a tier 2 section of the SEC. But those 4 that I mentioned, I think they're about as locked in to the playoff as it gets. And that's a big part of the playoff. I mean, that's a third of the playoff right there that you're getting from one conference. But man, that those top 4 are absolutely incredible.
I think I would say this year my pick would be Texas to win the SEC. I think that their schedule versus say some other school schedules far more, when as long as they do well, legit to be number one. They do have to get past some good teams out of conference play also. So that no matter who they play in the SEC, as long as they don't lose a game and they win their non-conference games, I mean, the chances of it happening are probably the best. I picked Texas. Would you agree, or do you want to go with somebody else?
I'm actually going to go with Georgia. The
Oh,
only thing with Texas, see, here's the thing: they bring back Quinn Ewers. I don't think if they were bringing back Quinn Ewers, people would be talking. I don't think people would be as high on them as they are. And obviously, that sounds stupid, but it's like, well, yeah, obviously, if they're not bringing back their starting quarterback from last year's playoff team, they're not going to be as good. But the point I want to make with that though is if Georgia wasn't bringing back Carson Beck, and they were starting something else.
Correct.
The rest of that roster is so much better than the rest of Texas's roster this year. Texas is losing a lot. That doesn't mean they're not talented. That doesn't mean they can't go far and win the SEC. I think they absolutely can. I think they're going to make the SEC championship game and lose to Georgia.
Right.
So that's the only difference I would have. Texas playoff lock in my mind, but Georgia bring back more the important positions, so that's why I would leave them.
Okay. Well, I tell you what, I'm going to pick Texas, and you can pick Georgia, and we'll just sort it out from there. Because it's tough. It is. I mean, Missouri could be up there. You never know if they have a great year. The
Yeah,
SEC has the most Heisman candidates of all the conferences. Um, let's move on to the Big Ten, a more controversial look. SEC is full of great teams, but now the Big Ten is full of more great teams with the addition of Washington, Oregon, USC. I mean, those three right there were the best in the Pac-12 many times. And so, who's your pick for the Big Ten?
well, I am a little biased. I am going to go with the Ohio State Buckeyes, and I don't think this is one of the years that me saying that I think even the most Ohio State, what's the word I'm looking for here, the people who hate Ohio State the most would probably agree with me on that. Now, that doesn't mean I think they're going to go undefeated in the regular season. They have to go to Oregon and to Penn State this year, along with having to play Michigan at the end. Who knows about that game? And Michigan, they're going to gaslight themselves into another great run potentially, and gaslight themselves into believing they're innocent. It's a topic for another day. But I would pick Ohio State because this is the most loaded roster I've ever seen on paper. I think the difference is going to be can those guys outside, those rushers in particular, who came back for their fourth season, haven't lived up to the hype yet. I think those guys are going to be the key, and I think they will live up to the hype finally this season. But again, I don't think they're going to go undefeated in the regular season. I just can't see them beating all those great teams. But I do think they'll end up winning the Big Ten.
I like the take. I'm an anti Ohio State fan, but like you said, all the haters. I'm an Ohio State neutral because my favorite team is Northwestern, and I have so much to root for because we're always the underdog. I said that to say this: when you're a fan of a team, or you pick a team to win that is the favorite, I think there's a lot more pressure. So with Ohio State being due to have a good season, they have done well under Ryan Day, but the pressure is Michigan, and the pressure is the new great teams in the Big Ten. I'm solely picking Ohio State to be the top ranked team, but I also feel like there's an openness in this first year of 18 teams vying for that. And as far as standings go, I would think that the winner of the conference is going to end up an automatic bid because you can't possibly have this many teams. But man, if there's a like if let's say Ohio State does lose 2 games and other teams lose 2 games, it puts the potential for a 2-game loss champion not being ranked number 4 or better. So I would say that Ohio State is going to be the top ranked and they should be the automatic bid as well. Um, with that said, how does the other at large bids look? You got to choose somebody that's not in the big conferences. What teams do you have that you think would be there?
So are you just talking from the Big Ten or the entire
I'm
country?
saying from the non-power conferences, what teams could end up there in the playoff?
Oh, okay.
Is it
From the
one or is it
non-power conference.
three or
Probably just one. I hate to say it. The one that has the easiest path, just given their schedule, is Liberty. They're going to be favored in every single game they play. In terms of the thing, I don't think Liberty is the best Power Five team, but they could end up having the best record. If they played a team like Boise State, for example, who is bringing back everybody and their running back, Ashton Jaunty or Jeanty, however you say it, the fact that he's still at Boise State and didn't get scooped up by an Ole Miss or one of these SEC programs or even a Big Ten program that needed it is beyond me. And they got the USC transfer Malachi Nelson coming in to play quarterback. They're going to be loaded.
Yeah.
And so they're probably the best team, but will they win enough games to overtake Liberty? I think that's the question.
Um, I think you're missing one big non-Power Five conference team, that
Who is that?
Notre Dame.
Oh, well, yeah,
Because that's
I
my
guess I.
pick. My pick
No,
is
I
Notre
mean,
Dame.
yes. The obvious pick is Notre Dame, and I would pick them to make the playoff. I was more or less, I was
You're
just
saying
picking
like, yeah,
just a group of five.
right. So
If yeah,
so if that makes five right there, and then you have
yeah,
you gotta put, right. Don't you have to put the next highest ranked? You think they'd come from the bigger conferences. So I believe maybe what the playoff has done is they have said, okay, we're going to take four from the Power Four. Notre Dame's going to get in, like as long as they don't have three losses, um,
right.
and because they play as great a schedule as anybody else in football every
Not
year.
this year though.
Well,
Not this year though. This is one of the rare years where Notre Dame doesn't actually have that difficult of a schedule. Now, that doesn't mean they're going to go undefeated, but this is one of the rare years where I think Notre Dame is going to benefit from a not so great schedule.
they play A&M, and depending on how they do there, they play USC, they play Virginia, they play Florida State. So I would say that they have as good a strength of schedule, especially if like Army and Navy are good. So it seems like every other year one of them is really good, and then
Right.
so they don't play any FCS schools like other. I just think that as long as they have one loss, they're getting in every year, and that's sad to say, but that's what you have to accept, from this new playoff because Notre Dame is every year ranked in the top 12. It seems like so. Yeah. Well, again, thanks for coming on the show. We'll be collaborating again in the future, I guess. Once the season starts, we'll try to do a show every week or two. I like your in your take on things.